the destination and not speed to get to the destination. If you're going slow, just work at your own pace and get to where you're going. The destination and the path is what's important, not how fast you get there.
Welcome to the Short Term Show, the show about short-term rentals and long-term wealth, with real property owners hosting real properties who are crushing it in the vacation and short-term rental space. And here's your host, Avery Carl.
Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Short Term Show. Thank you so much for joining us every week. I've got a super cool guest today, but first, we are still hiring in Orlando, the Smokies, the Poconos, Branson, and Myrtle Beach. We have more buyers than our agents in those markets can handle. So please reach out if you think that you might be a good fit for that. careers@theshorttermshop.com. Also, I want to remind you, we have our Short Term Shop Plus app that you can download. Lots of cool stuff in there. And then we also house our paid mentorship program in there as well. But it is 100% free for the app download. And there's a library in there of videos you can watch and things like that. You can schedule one-on-one calls with our coaches. You don't even have to be a member of the mentorship to do that. You just pay a little bit per coaching call. So we've got people who are available during the day, during the night. We've got design experts, we've got revenue management experts, whatever you need right there in the Short Term Shop Plus app. And you can get more information on that at STS+.com. Now we will get into our guests. We've got Toni Boer on the Bourbon Trail. How's it going, Toni?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thank you.
Awesome. So I've known Toni for a few years now. We see each other at all the meetups and conferences and all that, but I've never had her on the show. So figured it was time to fix that. And she's had a few really interesting things happen over the past few years that I think you guys will find interesting. But first, Toni, will you just introduce yourself to our audience and give us your backstory? How'd you get into real estate and short-term rental investing?
Yep. So I'm Toni Boer. A lot of...
I totally butchered your name. My bad.
Toni Boer, I'm most known for the Kentucky Bourbon Trail area, helping clients invest in the area. And so anyhow, I started back in COVID time frame, was when we bought our first property ourselves. And at the same time, I was getting my license during that fun period as well. So it was a whirlwind because my kids were home from school and I got thrown into being a parent teacher that I would have never signed up for. And we had 5 kids at home at that time, from high school down to early elementary, kindergarten, first grade age at that time. So it was a lot going on. And I talked my husband into buying a house that we could the goal was to buy a second home that we could use as our family that wasn't a 5-hour drive or a 10-hour drive or something like that. We could just go for an hour drive and use the house and get away and things like that. That was the goal. And then I was like, okay, if other people will rent it and pay half of our mortgage, that's great. We only have to pay half the mortgage. Or if it ends up covering all the mortgage, that's great too. And so that first property was $200,000. It was a 3-bedroom. Actually, it was a 4-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom house. And we made it a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom house. Oh. And that was our first cash cow. It ended up turning into be a cash cow. And my original goal to use it for our family didn't happen because it was rented all the time. And
well, that's good.
Yeah. And so that triggered my infatuation, my passion at the time with this industry. It was like, holy crap. I fell in love with communicating with the guests, learning why they were coming to the area, introducing myself to the tourism directors in each county, city council members, just anything I could find to learn. I wanted to be in it and learn it and know it and help these guests have a better experience. And so that is when I knew that when I got my license, that traditional real estate wasn't going to be exactly what I did, which was crazy even then at the time, because, most real estate agents, they'll sell you a house you can live in it, your primary house, investment, whatever. And so I turned that completely off, which created a niche for me personally. But in the real estate industry, especially in Kentucky, it was kind of weird because people treated me like I had four heads. They were like, why would you not take a sale? It's real estate. And I just knew that wasn't my passion to help Sally, buy a house in this community, to go to that church with her sister and that school.
As a matter of fact, it's actually horrible. I hate selling primary home real estate because people are completely unreasonable. They'll like not buy stuff over the paint color. And they don't see I can just paint this. I can just change this out. They're like waiting to walk into the world's most perfect place. And I can't deal with that.
Yeah. And their budget is not what they're wanting. And so I knew early on that once we got that first house, that this was something that I felt like it was calling me to do. And it was, as silly as it might sound, it just felt like it was in my soul. Like it was just a connection that I had never experienced before. And I just kind of took it and rolled with it from there.
Yeah, it is fun. It's fun selling vacation rentals because I love walking around in real estate. Now, I don't like selling primary homes, but I will go to all the open houses. Luke and I went to, we drug our kids around to like an open house tour in New Orleans a few weeks ago. And it's just no intention of buying anything, obviously. And it's just fun walking around in real estate. And vacation rental real estate is even more fun because it's beach houses and cabins and all these fun types of real estate.
Yeah. And seeing what other people are doing with their house. And I love that too.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. I've loved walking around in house since I was a little kid. I never said I want to grow up and be a real estate agent because most people don't, but I have always enjoyed walking around in houses.
Yes. Same. I have pictures of me like 10, 11, 12 years old. I don't know if you remember or not, but they used to have like these big, thick MLS books that you would get at like the front of the grocery store, and they would come out monthly. And I remember like excited the first week of every month going to the grocery because I knew that new MLS book would be out again, and it would have like sold across houses or like pending or new listing or whatever. And it would only give you like a cover shot of the outside of the house. And I would look at those books like it was a novel.
Yeah.
And I remember like feeling excited for those people who I remember last month wasn't sold or pending. And I was like, oh my gosh, that house got, a contract. And I'm like 11.
Yes. I was a little bit younger. I would read those like sitting in the cart while my mom shopped, and then thinking now like my kids have been to a grocery store less than 10 times in their life because we just use Instacart. So they don't have that whole experience of that. But yeah, I do remember those, and that was fun. Now we just can scroll Zillow on our phones all day. But anyway, let's hear about you. That's how you got started with your first short-term rental. You just wanted to have a place for your family, but you've got a few more now. So tell me what all you got, where you got them.
So the majority of our properties are in Kentucky. We've built a multi-million-dollar portfolio there in Kentucky alone. And just this year have I ventured out of Kentucky. I'm actually in Florida right now at our property that we bought in May. And we are here kind of living here, setting it up and getting things a little bit renovated. We added a bathroom. There was an office here that we didn't want to use as an office, and we've turned that into a bedroom. And getting the permit for adding the bathroom has been a nightmare. But so we have vacationed here forever. And I've continued to push my husband, Andrew, to buy a property here. And he had always said no. He didn't think the numbers worked and whatever. And so finally, we decided this year was the year. And we did that in May. And here we are. So
you just got to, with the husband's man, you just have to make him think it was their idea. Yes.
So, and now that we're here, he's in love. Like it's, we think it's one of our best decisions ever. And we both feel like we're on the same page. So I think that's really important through all of this, is that initially I thought that I was going to be kind of pushing him to the ledge, and we were going to go on this uphill battle with us being in separate mindsets of what this would look like. But so it's really peaceful feeling it being a mutual love for being here and enjoying it.
Yeah, I love Florida, not just for vacation rentals. I just love being in Florida.
Yeah.
I need the heat and humidity to live. Luke would disagree with me, but
I love
okay.
it. So I would rather be 95 degrees outside or 100 than 10 degrees outside any day. So I will sweat all day long versus be cold.
Yeah, I will not be cold. So, okay. So you've got how many in Kentucky, did you say?
We have 8.
8 in Kentucky and 1 in Florida.
Yep.
Okay. And where in Kentucky, I know Bourbon Trail, but are these in different cities or are they all like really close to each other? How does that work?
Yep. So the Bourbon Trail is actually a huge area. It's probably 10 counties, cities. And so kind of spread out. And just like I tell my clients, it's never, they ask me the number one question of like, which town should I buy in? I know the Bourbon Trail is big, but which town is better? And so that's never really the focus that I focus on or would want them to. It's property specific. And so when I'm in the market for a home or helping a client look for their property, I tell them not to just look in one town because you could miss out on something one town over. And so the distilleries and things like that that are bringing our guests, they're in clusters. Like there's 5 or 6 distilleries in this town, 3 or 4 distilleries in this town. And it's all within, generally 30 to 45 minutes to each town, maybe just 10 minutes. It could be just 10 minutes. So we have one property in Indiana, which is just across the bridge from Louisville. So we get the overflow from Louisville guests without investing in Louisville because Louisville is a beast. And then the rest of them are just outside of Louisville, Lawrenceburg, Shelbyville. The property that we lost in the flood in April was in Frankfurt. And then I co-host several properties for other clients.
Okay. Yeah, I want to hear about that, about the flood property. And Louisville does not allow short-term rentals at all, right? Or
they do. It is just very, very restricted. Zoning is, it's just a nightmare. You could do all the check boxes and think you're going to go to your meeting and get your permit. And then that board is very moody, for lack of a better word. And I have seen multiple people think that they're going to get their permit that night. And for whatever reason, based on someone's mood, it just gets denied. And it's weird because like all the boxes were checked. And it's just, I don't invest in Louisville personally. It's not that you can't, you can, it's just, need to be prepared for what that looks like. And if it's zoned commercial, you're good to go. And that's with anywhere along the Bourbon Trail. If it's zoned commercial, you don't need a permit or anything like that.
Yeah. I think that's most places, but yeah. So it's kind of like your typical big metro area. All right. So you had a house river house flood earlier this year, and it ended up being condemned by the city or county or what have you. So I think that is a lot of people's worst fear about short-term rental investing, especially if you're buying something unique that's like on a river or something cool. There's always, if you've got something cool, there is a risk there. Like if it's on water or has a view, you're going to be up high, people falling off of things, whatever. So tell me all about that from start to finish.
Okay. So last year we had a property called the Tavern. It was in Lawrenceburg, and it was a cash cow for us. And we had been talking about wanting a river property, but river properties don't come on the market very often. And so when they do come, they usually go fast. And there was this one particular property in Frankfurt that I had tried to sell to clients multiple times, and it needed updating. It was dated, and no one would bite on it. And so then when Andrew and I started talking about selling the Tavern and looking for a river property, I was like, okay, well, there's this one that, I've tried to sell to other people. No one's wanting it. We could go take a look at it. And so we did. And he was like, yes, absolutely. Let's do this. Let's go. So we sold our Tavern to a client I actually had that was looking in the area, and it was perfect fit for him, budget and all the things. So we 1031'd that Tavern into the river house. We did an extensive renovation on the river house. And the first week of April, I was just about to order furniture for the river house. And that week was it was a really weird week because it's not that we're not like a flood prone area. And this property set up kind of, on a cliffside. And the people that we had bought it from, they had lived there for 25 years themselves, and only maybe like 8 inches had ever gotten in the basement of the property. And so they would just cut out like a foot of drywall and baseboards and, clean it up and put it back together or whatever. And so we felt, pretty comfortable that like the most it's ever gotten in 25 years was, a few inches. So we closed on that property in October. This past first week of April, the weather people were just like, they kept upping like this rain system that was coming in of, like how high the river was going to rise. And we had already had the hot tub there. It was sitting on the back patio. And that last day, I told Andrew, I was like, I think we really need to move the hot tub. I don't know. My gut is just saying that we need, because him and some guys had gone to put the hot tub up on cinder blocks, like 3 or 4 feet high. That was a task in itself. And so I just said, like, my gut just says we should go get the hot tub and move it to one of our other houses. And so he and some guys did that. They moved the hot tub. And then, those last couple of days, the weather people just kept saying, it's going to rise. And the numbers just kept going up. So anyway, it started raining. It rained for days and days and days, and the river kept rising. And we had, Ring cameras on the outside of the back of the house that like were over the river. And so it was eerie to watch the river rise and just get closer and closer to the house. And then we had some Ring cameras that we put in the basement. So as the water came in the house, we were just like watching as the water would come up. And so, we had 8-foot ceilings in our basement. And then, you would go upstairs or whatever. So a couple of days go by, and finally the water reached the ceiling of the basement, and our cameras were underwater. And it was weird because I'll shout out to Ring. Our cameras worked underwater for like 2 days. Yes. Our interior Ring camera worked for like 2 days underwater, and we would just see like gurgles. And I was just like waiting for a big fish to go by. And it was just weird watching that. And then suddenly it was gone. Like one day I went to go log in and it was gone. And I was like, crap. So anyway, our neighbors that lived next door, that was their primary home. And we had, throughout our renovation, just gotten really close friendship wise with them. And they left at the last minute. They literally canoed themselves.
Oh my
God. When they got evacuated or when they finally decided to leave. But before he left, he canoed over to our house and went in upstairs, and the water had already gotten upstairs. And so it was like halfway up our kitchen cabinets upstairs, second level. And so, and then it was another 3 or 4 days before we could get access, not even access to the house, because after the flood happened, it takes a few days for it to recede. And so we had never been through anything like this before. We didn't know really what to expect or what that looks like. And, this is a newly renovated house. So I'm like freaking out. All of our hard work, we just spent like 60 or 70 grand on this house, and it's in the river. And so Andrew, finally, we got back in the house probably 4 or 5 days later, and you start calling in the restoration company, fans and all the stuff. The basement drywall took itself off. And so it was just mush, for lack of better explanation. Yeah. And so then it was just shovels of cleaning that out. We had one day that we had access to the house before, not the neighbor who canoed over, but the other side of our neighbor of the house, they had a landslide. And Andrew and some guys were there working at our house, and they heard the noise, but Kentucky isn't known for landslides. And so, it was like, okay, boom, the whole back side of the house, like the land fell in the river all the way back up to these people's house, like foundation, everything was exposed. And so within hours, the county was at our house, the state police, sheriffs, all these people were at our house, and they condemned our house because then our backyard started to fall away too. So it was just kind of like a ripple effect. And they gave Andrew and the guys 15 minutes to evacuate the house. They were throwing tools and everything out the front yard. He said, once I tape your house off, you can't go back in. And so I wasn't there that day, but so everybody was just hands on deck, throwing tools and everything we could out the front door, basically into the front yard. And so from that point on, I had never experienced what a condemned house meant or what the law was behind that, but you basically lose your property rights. And if you go behind the tape, you can be arrested and all sorts of things. A neighbor down the street went in his house and he was arrested because for probably a week, almost 2 weeks after the flood, they had sheriffs parked out in front of our house, state police, county officials. They were literally like 24-hour surveillance.
Wow.
Parked out front. And because they were also trying to protect looters or from looting. And while our house was pretty much empty, we didn't have it furnished, or we didn't have too much stuff there. We had some things there, but not a whole house full of stuff. So I think that protection was mainly for them and against looting and things. So it was just an interesting process. We're still dealing with it with the county. And with FEMA, because this was not our primary house, we could not get any assistance from FEMA. And
didn't know that.
Yeah. I learned a whole lot. So because it wasn't our first primary house, we couldn't get assistance. But there's other programs that are for businesses or secondary properties that we were able to get connected with. And so there were actually 6 houses that were condemned, us being one of them. And we're still working with the county. So what's going to happen is they're going to buy back our properties, and it's what we're being told, fair market value. They will send in appraisers at some point. They haven't done that yet. And we have pictures and receipts and things of what the house looked like when, we were working on it and renovating it. Since we had just bought the house in October of last year, we do have that most current appraisal for what we bought the house for. And then we have, a trail showing that what we spent on the house during renovation. So they said that we won't get the purchase price plus the 60, 70,000 that we spent. It'll be somewhere in between. But like, we had to file our insurance claim. Insurance had to pay the max out that we had with that. And then the balance would be paid through this county program. But we're still working through the weeds on that. We haven't been paid out on it. I don't know when. We've heard anywhere from, it could be a month from now to 12 months from now. So it sucks because we have to pay our mortgage on that house. Our mortgage company did give us a 3-month forbearance, but we're back to paying mortgage.
Previous owners never had more than 8 inches of water in there. What flood zone was this property?
I don't know. I don't know exactly what flood zone it was in, but I mean, like, we were pretty high up on a hillside. And so, and this was considered what they call a 100-year historic flood. So once every 100 years, something like this happens. And it was pretty much right on from 100 years ago, the last time Frankfurt had seen a flood like this. So it's not something that, again, like, we see this all the time. We don't. And it just happened to happen.
Did the mortgage servicer or the lender require you to have flood insurance on this? Okay. So that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least you had it. So,
but what I want to tell people is we had a commercial policy because we owned the home in our LLC, not our personal names. And so we had commercial policy. So loss of use, loss of income, all of that was on the commercial policy. But then we also had a secondary policy for flood insurance. What I learned, and what I would love for anybody else to know, is that you need to make sure that on your flood insurance policy, you also have loss of use and loss of income, because they wanted to use only our flood insurance policy and not our commercial policy. And I thought initially, when the process first started, that one would kick in after the other and we could still claim our loss of use and loss of income from our commercial policy, but that wasn't the case. Our commercial policy was completely unused and they would not use it. So technically, what I didn't know was, while we had flood insurance and we were covered, for that, but loss of use and loss of income, you also need on that policy as well.
Oh, I didn't know. So that's like a box you can check to make sure on your flood insurance. Good to know.
I had no idea until this happened. And it was such a huge learning curve for us. And so now, even as we own our home here in Florida, we're on the Sarasota Bay and we're not in a flood zone, but I surely got flood insurance on this house, and I made sure that there's loss of income and loss of use and all the things that I learned from the Kentucky house.
Yeah, it's always better to be overinsured than underinsured, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, man. All right. So we got, where do we go from that? I'm not quite sure how to transition into the next. So really good advice on an absolute worst case scenario. This is not something that's going to happen often or at all to you. It may never happen to you, but something can and will. The longer you own real estate and the more real estate you own, something will happen. I've had 3 fires. Only one was, fully burned down, all kinds of things. So always make sure that you're keeping up to date on your insurance too. Like we saw this a lot in 2021 and 2022 was people who bought houses for, 200, 300,000 10 years ago. Now they're worth close to $1 million, and they never went back and updated the value of their house with their insurance. I mean, we have the absolute worst case scenario that I saw is we had a house that was listed, a cabin in the Smokies. We sold it to them prior to COVID, I think 2018 for like 300 something. It was on the market. She listed it for 1.2 million.
Wow.
And it was only insured for 300, and there was a wildfire and it burnt to the ground. Now, to add insult to injury, we had 2 full price offers on this property that the seller did not accept because they had it was either that it wasn't all cash or that they were getting a loan or that they wanted to get an inspection. It was something ridiculous that is totally standard. And if she had accepted even the second offer, it would have closed at 1.2 million 2 weeks before it burned down.
Wow.
So that's another absolute worst case scenario. But guys, make sure that you're staying on top of that insurance, because there's been times that Luke and I have gotten something in the mail and been like, oh my God, we're 3 months out of insurance on this property. Like, it's something that you need to be checking. I would say monthly, have it on your spreadsheet of things to do, maybe your Trello board or whatever, depending on how many, if you have one property, you don't have to do it monthly, but if you've got a lot, you need to be making sure because they're going to expire at different times. But make sure that at least, quarterly, you're checking on that and making sure that you're not way off on what that value is, because you can really mess up. And everybody, if you're in a flood zone, go back and check that flood insurance and make sure you have those boxes checked that Toni talked about, because that's really good advice.
Yeah, when that happened, I wanted to go back on all of our policies and just make sure that we had things checked off and values that were right. And one of them, it actually wasn't. We have a barn on that property, and the dwelling wasn't included on our insurance policy for whatever reason. And we didn't find that out until we just went back and wanted to make sure that we were properly covered on the rest of our houses. And lo and behold, this ginormous barn on one of our properties wasn't on there. So,
wow. See, you'll always find something.
Yep.
All right. So enough with the worst case scenario. It's always good to be prepared for the worst case scenario, but 99.999% of the time you're in not the worst case scenario. So let's talk about some positives about your portfolio. I want to hear about this Florida place, the most recent one. So it's in the Sarasota area. So what do the numbers look like on that? What'd you pay for it? What are you thinking it's going to make?
So we paid $890,000 for this property. And this property is special to us in a way because the week that our Frankfurt house flooded was the same week that we also went under contract on this house. And so, or just like 3 or 4 days before the flood happened is when we went under contract on this house. And so initially up front, we did have to take some funds to go towards the river house cleanup, restoration, the fans, that company, they wanted to deposit. And there was some other things I don't remember. But anyway, so, we were lined up, to buy this property. And then the flood happened. We had to use some funds for that. And it turned into a crap show because the sellers of this house were not nice at all. It was a debacle. They were the most mean, hateful people I've ever experienced in my life. And so we had to delay closing by like a week. It wasn't long. It was just, maybe a week or 10 days. And they were like threatening to cancel our deal, hold our earnest deposit, all these things. It was wild. But here we are. So Yeah, it was crazy. So 890,000, we bought it as a 3-3, and it has an office, as I mentioned before, that we've since added the closet to make it a full bedroom. It's a large room, so it totally needs its own closet. And then we are adding a bathroom. So now it's going to be a 4-4 technically, but we also finished out the garage because the garage is going to be the bunk room. And so, and the garage has its own bathroom also. So it'll sleep 14. The numbers should be close to 200,000
Oh, wow.
on it.
That's awesome.
Yep.
And you paid how much?
We paid $890. We've also added a pickleball out back. We've got a hot tub that we've added. We've got, and some other things that I can't disclose.
Not till it launches. Got it.
We're jacking out the backyard.
Nice. Awesome. Well, love that. So, and what you're telling me as a real estate agent who hears there's no deals left, there's short-term rentals dead, is that you just found a deal. And
yes.
And you know what? You're not picking up deals off the ground that just make sense the way that they are. That's not how it works. That's 2015 talk where deals were just laying around. But if you are patient and persistent, you will find a deal that you can do some things too, which maybe it's renovating it, maybe it's just managing it better in order to make the numbers be what you need them to be. I don't know if you're seeing this with your clients, but our new clients coming in this year they really, really only care about actual rental history. They don't want to really I don't want to say they don't want to do any analysis or look at anything, but or especially, maybe not our clients, but buyers on our listings, they only care about actual rental history. They're not interested in looking on AirDNA or Price Labs or anything like that. They're just putting a lot more emphasis on rental history only, rather than treating the rental history as one piece of a lot of data that you need to get. Guys, you need to get all the data you can. Get subscriptions to all of the data companies. Look at the rental history, of course, but use all of these pieces of data, because you never know if that rental history is terrible, or maybe that rental history is run by the absolute best manager there ever was, and you're never going to get close to it. You need to be able to gauge where on that spectrum this property falls. So you can't just say, oh, yes, this rental history, yes or no, thank you. You really do have to do the full.
And how you can improve it. And I use your strategy, the enemy method, like it's going out of style. so even here, we have vacationed here for years and years, but as a investment of our own now, I'm looking at the next level up of short-term rentals here and what those houses have like over on the island. And, what can I add to my property here that I can afford and implement and things like that. And some of the things are as simple as like a cereal dispenser. Like it's got like those 3 containers of Fruit Loops and, whatever else. So Amazon sent me those cereal dispensers, but like, I'm not seeing that in a lot of houses here. But I saw it on some of the higher end houses and I'm like, gosh, that's, super cheap and easy thing to do. I could throw that in, no big deal. And just looking at that over and over again. And the same for Kentucky. So for Kentucky, it's still an emerging market. And so most people who have bought and are investing there, they're not selling because they're doing so well. And to buy an already income producing property in Kentucky is few and far between. Several of my clients are now buying their second and third properties in Kentucky, but it's hard to find one that is going up for sale because people are just hanging on them because they do so well. And, and I tell people too, for Kentucky, to be careful with the data websites, because even for my first property, it's now a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom. But when we first bought that, I think AirDNA said something like $34,000 that it was going to make, is what AirDNA had said. And that covered our mortgage and lined our pockets a little bit at that time. And so, but that property has made 75,000.
Oh, wow.
So it's just, and I tell people, just because you have a 4-bedroom house and, 5 other people have a 4-bedroom house, you have to look at their amenities and then know who your competition is. If they look like grandma's house, that's not your competition. We're not looking at them. We're going to look at the ones that matter and go from there. So that's the revenue that you should be counting and moving towards, and how you can do better than that. So
yeah, absolutely. If you are being one of those people who only is looking at rental history and nothing else, make sure, the house you're looking at, if you're looking at a mama papa house, then it's not going to be doing as well as the same exact house has good decor, photos, amenities. So you do have to take that into consideration, that short-term rentals are so subjective. Like, there's a guy in my inbox right now saying, well, I the pictures of random homes on the internet is not helpful for me. Like, sending links to listings. I need to see a full, I've come from the apartment world. And anytime somebody says I come from the apartment world, I'm like, listen, you are going to have a real hard time with this, because apartment rental income is the same when I'm owning it and selling it to you. It's the same until people move out, until those leases end. This is not that. So when people are like, oh yeah, I own a bunch of apartments, I'm like, God, okay, this is going to be tough to get you to switch that mindset of how subjective analyzing a short-term rental income is.
Yep. Totally agree.
Yeah. Well, Toni, this has been a great chat. And we have 3 questions that we ask almost said client, that we ask every guest that comes on the show. First question, what advice would you give 20-year-old Toni if you knew then what you know now?
Do it. 1, I would have loved to have had someone walk beside me through real estate stuff at 20. I would have loved to have house hacked if I knew about that at that time. I would say that, follow the destination and not speed to get to the destination. If you're going slow, just work at your own pace and get to where you're going. The destination and the path is what's important, not how fast you get there.
Very true. All right. Similar question, but not advice for your past self, advice for a current new investor who's looking to get started today.
Don't get decision paralysis. The best time to buy real estate was yesterday. I think don't get caught up in all of the shiny podcast and influencers, people who have 10, 20, $30 million portfolios. Those people didn't start there. They started well below that. Don't get in above your head. If you have never renovated a home, don't go and buy a house that needs a total gut. Buy something that
across
you can
the
afford.
country.
Yeah, exactly. Buy something that you can afford and that you can relatively get up and running quickly and get your cash flow coming in.
Yes, that is great advice. And a lot of the general real estate podcasters and influencers talk about the BRRRR strategy and doing rehabs. And then, if you've never had to yell at a contractor, you do not need to be renovating across the country from where you live if you've never done that before, because even with the best ones, communication can get sideways, expectations can be sideways. And unless you're I don't want to say a little bit experienced, somewhat experienced in having done some renovations, don't try to do that on your very first rental property and across the country from you.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, our first house that we bought was $200,000. That was in 2020. We just bought this house for just below $900,000.
All right. And last question, what's your favorite book that's impacted your mindset?
This is going to be funny. This is going to shock the world.
Harry Potter.
No, it was actually a book. I think it came out last year. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Be Useful.
Oh,
and
I haven't read that one.
He is a real estate guy. And even before he was who he is now, he did real estate investing. He started off in apartments and lived in the apartment that he bought. And he built his wealth through real estate, actually. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then it transferred over into commercial space and things like that. But that book, he talks about, having a vision, and even if it's blurry, have your vision and focus on that and move towards that. And it just, it was a weird book because I'm not like Arnold Schwarzenegger's #1 fan, but I was at an airport. Andrew and I were traveling, and when we get on an airplane, Andrew puts his earbuds in, and I'm not that person. I need to be entertained. And so he will ignore me or whatever. And so we were at the airport, and I went into one of those little shops, and I was looking for a book to read on the airplane. the selection was slim, and I just picked that one up. And when I got on the airplane, and for like 2 days, I could not put that book down.
Wow.
And this was like a year ago. This was probably last summer. And to this day, that's probably the best book I've ever read. And I still go back to it. I literally went through that book and highlighted and starred and underlined so much of that book. And I've shared it with people just because it was, I don't know, it just oddly influenced me. And especially knowing that like he's a real estate investor, and he talks about income producing properties. And I had no idea. So
I didn't either. Well, I'll have to check that out. All right, Toni. So if our listeners,
and of course, your books.
Oh, stop. If our listeners want to find you and follow you, how can they do that?
I am on Facebook the most. So my name, Toni Boer, on Facebook. If you're on Instagram, it's BNB_LDY. So BNB_LDY. And I'm on LinkedIn also as myself.
All right. As myself. I hate Facebook. Anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. And guys, we will catch you on next week's episode. Thank you so much for listening.